My main pastime from a few years ago was mainly video games, specifically competitive multiplayer games. Didn't really matter what type of game it was, as long as it was a game where competition was the main point, I would play it. Games like Rocket League, Halo, Smite, Destiny 2, Guilty Gear Strive, and especially Killer Instinct back in 2014 to 2015, where I played for actual money. Out of all the skills I acquired over the years in gaming though, the most important thing I learned was controlling tilt. Tilt is a term mostly used in gaming to describe being mentally perturbed or off in some way, due to some circumstance not going your way. A better way to describe it would be playing angry. Now, I did a video a long time ago about this very topic, but there's some other skills I've learned in dealing with tilt that I think will help out those who struggle with driving angry. It's important to note that this video is more like an audio essay than a video, so there won't be as much visual aid here. As such, if you want to have this in the background while you wrench on your cars, I won't be upset. Speaking of which, I'd also like to thank this video sponsors A-Main Hobbies, Peach State Hobbies, and Cow RC. Anything you guys purchase using the links and codes in the description below will directly support me as well. Let us begin. Dealing with tilt can be done in two stages: identification and treatment. Let's start with identification. When you're at the track, ideally for many of us, all we'll be thinking will be the track day itself. RC is an escape for many of us. We use it to escape from our everyday lives that can be filled with uncertainty and doubt. However, uncertainty and doubt and other negative feelings can absolutely seep into our proverbial safe space. Even worse, those things can affect our mood while we're in a place where those negative feelings don't really apply. This is where we can start to identify those negative feelings and their source. Maybe you're having relationship struggles, maybe you have an assignment at school due in a few days and you've been procrastinating, or any number of reasons why someone may be stressed in today's world. Of course, there's always going to be things in your life that will be outside of your control, and that's okay. When we're at the track, none of that stuff should matter. This leads me to the question of personal care. If you find yourself making mistakes you normally wouldn't make, or perhaps you get more angry at small things more often than usual, you might want to take a step back and ask yourself a few personal questions. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating well? Are you getting sufficient exercise? Each of these things can and will affect how you perform at the track, and each one is paramount to a healthy life. Of course, this is much easier said than done. I mean, I struggle with the happiness part all the time, but just because it's easy to say doesn't make it any less important. It's also important to make sure you aren't too hard on yourself when something inevitably goes wrong at the track. Literally every RC driver who has ever driven has made a mistake in their RC racing career. Even the top 1% of 1% of drivers who get paid to do this for a living. It's also important to note that the rest of us racers who do this as a hobby should treat it as such, a hobby to be enjoyed. I've said this a million times before and I'll say it again. RC racing is meant to be fun. It's up to us to allow it to be fun. Another thing to take into account is a positive mindset. I'm going to say positive a lot in this paragraph, so be prepared for that. Now, when I say positive mindset, I don't just mean thinking positively, even though that's a very big part of it. Tell me if you've ever heard these words at the track before. Quote unquote, any day at the track is a good day. This is the kind of mindset I'm talking about. A positive way of thinking about both noticing things and thinking about things. What I'm trying to say in a very roundabout way is that the more positive you think, the more positive emotions you'll feel, and the more positive things you'll notice in life. To illustrate my point, why don't we do a little exercise? I want you to take a minute or two to look around your room or office or everywhere you're watching this, and look for as many blue-colored things as you can. Take as long as you like. I'll wait. Now that you're finished, close your eyes and tell me how many red items you saw. Since you were looking for blue items and not red ones, you probably didn't recall too many red items. This same idea applies to having a positive mindset, as the more positive things you look for, the more you're going to find. This also has a looping effect. The more positive things you notice, the more positive your outlook will be. And because your outlook is more better, you are far more likely to focus on positive things in general. Rinse and repeat. Thing is though, completely blocking out negative emotions isn't really the play either. This leads me to a topic I also found much easier to talk about rather than implement, and that's self-reflection. This is one of the things that needs to be balanced. I once heard from the person who does most of my RC bodies from my early days of RC, like this one, aka my sister, that justified anger is your mind's way of telling you that you deserve better than what you're getting. And this is true. If you get rear-ended into the woods, and the marshal is so lost in space that another marshal from across the track had to marshal you from said woods, you would have every right to be mad in those moments. The trick is channeling and cooling of that anger. Did that last part seem very specific? That's because that's exactly what happened to me in my last race where I was leading in the semi-final. Now, in that moment I was mad at three things. The driver of the other car for forcing me off the track, the marshal for staring off into space, and myself for letting it all happen in the first place and losing my composure. Luckily, I still made it to the grand final by the skin of my teeth, but I was really close to losing that position. Once I got off the driver's stand though, a wave of calmness and relief washed over me, even though I was still upset. However, over some thought and self-reflection, that anger was gone for a few reasons. For one, I still made it into the grand final anyway, even though I'd be starting towards the back. Secondly, I realized that the person who rear-ended me was relatively new and didn't have a great handle on car control or racing etiquette. Lastly, even though I could still be mad at the marshal for not paying attention, one thing stopped me, and that was that being mad and getting into any form of confrontation wouldn't solve anything, nor would it have allowed me to get into the grand final in the first place if I had decided to drive angry. This is something I see a lot when something goes wrong in any form of RC. It's usually pretty easy to spot when someone is driving angry in RC. They use too much throttle in all applications, too much input in the steering, and they start to push their car beyond what it can handle and end up making mistakes they normally wouldn't make. This usually makes things far worse than they actually were in the first place, as driving angry can result in things like breaking your car in the worst case scenario. There are a few things you can do to avoid driving angry. Chief among them is slowing down and resetting. Any number of things that have happened to you during a race, be it a mistake, a problem with your car, or anything else, cannot be rectified by driving quicker in most cases. Once you lose time, it's usually impossible to make that time back up unless you really lock in and are a really talented driver. Instead, it may be better to just do a cooldown lap to reset yourself back to a default state of mind. Another thing that helps a lot is driving smart and mindfully, thinking while you drive. If you know you're coming up on someone who, let's say, doesn't fully understand racer etiquette and doesn't have full car control, and you need to get past them, it may be best to just stay behind them and wait for them to make a mistake. If you expect someone who doesn't have good car control to suddenly have it when you're next to them on the track, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. This leads me to the thumbnail statement of this video. Things aren't going to go your way, and that's okay. Like I've said many times before, RC for the majority of us is a hobby. Of course, some of us take it more seriously than others, and by nature RC racing is, well, racing and thus competitive, but at the end of the day, not too many of us are getting paid to race, and even fewer are making a living off RC to the point where you could actually afford a house or feed a family. Not only that, but RC racing in its nature can be unpredictable, especially off-road. Things will go wrong for you at some point, be it an engine flaming out, an ESC going haywire, your servo going out, someone bumping into you in just the wrong way, or any other incident outside of your control. All are basically inevitable. The key comes with how you deal with those situations and if/how you move on with your race day or race weekend. If you sit and fester your thoughts over every little thing that's gone wrong with you, you're going to be miserable. In the end, there will always be another race, be it next year, next month, or even next week. There will always be another, as long as we as racers keep it that way. If you made it this far in the video, I'll let you in on a little secret. I recently ordered some shirts with the Roach RC pixel art logo right on the front in size large. For now, they are in very limited numbers, so if you would like to have one, be sure to let me know via DM on Facebook, which is in the description below. Like I said before, they are in very limited quantity, so if you want one, be sure to let me know as soon as possible. If you'd like to support me another way though, be sure to hit the like button and sub to the channel if you'd like to see more. I'd also like to thank my active patrons and channel members, Michael Williams, RC Discord server, Dave Armstrong, Rob Bedingfield, Caden Merks, Ian Petrie, Jeffrey Kunz, Shane T. Ruth, Gable Barber, Freeman Racing Team, Jeffrey Kunz again, RC Trophy Chasers, Ralisk86, Claymore RC, Brian G, and especially Morrison Watt. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.